You know, it's incredible how a single life, or really a single death, can sometimes change the course of an entire nation. That's exactly the story of Sharif Osman Hadi, a young activist whose assassination shook Bangladesh to its very core. Our story starts right here, December 12th, 2025, Dhaka, Bangladesh. This is the day everything changed. One single event that kicked off this huge chain reaction of grief, anger, and, well, political chaos. So that's the big question, right? How on earth did the death of one 32-year-old activist, a former teacher, a poet, manage to bring an entire nation to a grinding halt? Let's dig in and find out.
Okay, so to really get the impact, we have to start with the event itself. We're going to look at the assassination and the incredibly tense days that followed when the country was just on edge.
And wow, did things unfold fast. It was just a shocking sequence of events. On December 12th, he's ambushed, shot in the head, just leaving a mosque. By the 15th, they've flown him to Singapore for top-tier medical care, but it was no use. The damage to his brainstem was just too much. On the 18th, his death is made official, and just 2 days after that, a massive state funeral is held in the capital. I mean, think about that. In just 8 days, an entire nation's focus is just completely laser-focused on this one man's fate.
And then the story just explodes beyond Bangladesh's borders. The primary suspect? Well, he apparently fled to India. And you can imagine that just poured gasoline on the fire of an already really tense diplomatic relationship.
But here's the thing. To really understand why his death hit so hard, we can't just look at the end. We've got to rewind. We need to look at the life he lived, the person he was, that put him on this path. So who was Sharif Osman Hadi? Well, he came from southern Bangladesh, the youngest of 6 kids in a religious family. Right from the start, he was this really curious, intellectual guy, which is what led him to study political science at the really well-regarded University of Dhaka. But he wasn't just some bookish political theorist. No way. He was also a published poet, super active in cultural circles. I mean, he was really woven into the artistic and social fabric of his community. And that's what's so interesting. Before he was a full-blown activist, he was a teacher, a lecturer in business studies, a community volunteer, and all those skills that make a great educator, right? The ability to communicate, to organize, to inspire people. Those became the very tools he used to build this huge political movement. It was a classic transformation, from shaping minds in a classroom to shaping a revolution on the streets. Okay, so how does a poet and teacher become this powerful voice of a revolution? Let's take a look at the ideas he was championing. So this all really kicks into high gear after the massive student-led revolution back in July 2024. In the aftermath, Hadi co-founds this group called Inqilab Mancha, which translates to Platform for Revolution. And look, this wasn't just some other political party. This was a youth-led movement. And they had this incredibly ambitious goal, to build a new state, one based on justice, and to push back against any kind of domination, whether it was from inside the country or from outside. And when it came to his rhetoric, Hadi did not pull any punches. I mean, listen to this quote. He flat out accused the previous government of being fascist. He used this really raw, emotional language to talk about the violence against protesters, which, really connected with people on a gut level. So what were his core beliefs? Well, his platform was pretty direct, you could say uncompromising. First, there was this intense nationalism. He wanted a total break from the old guard, the old way of doing politics. He was also fiercely against the old ruling party, the Awami League, which had been a dominant force for ages. I mean, he wanted them banned from politics altogether. But he wasn't just about tearing things down. He was also trying to build something new, inviting other opposition parties to form a kind of national government. And threaded through all of this was a really sharp critique of India's role in the region, what he bluntly called Indian hegemony. And to give you an idea of just how far he was willing to push this nationalist rhetoric, at one point his group circulated this really controversial map. It showed a greater Bangladesh that actually included parts of modern-day India. It was a hugely provocative move, for sure, but it was designed to show how radical he was and to really fire up his supporters. So that brings us right back to where we started, his death. And what happened next wasn't just grief. It was a very deliberate process of turning a political leader into something more, into a national symbol, a martyr. I mean, just look at the scale of this. The public response was absolutely massive. We're talking tens of thousands of people. You had government officials standing shoulder to shoulder with regular citizens, all flooding the grounds of the National Parliament for his funeral. It was this incredible collective outpouring of national grief.
And the government's actions really cemented his status. The interim leader declared an official day of state mourning, calling his death an irreparable loss for the nation. So, you see, this wasn't being treated as just the death of an activist anymore. It was being framed as a national tragedy.
And then came the acts that would truly forge his legacy. First, he was given the title of Shaheed, which means martyr. Then, his burial site. He was laid to rest right next to Qazi Nazrul Islam, the national poet of Bangladesh. That is a place of incredible symbolic honor. So his death was transformed. It became this powerful rallying point, supercharging the very causes he fought for: democratic reform and national sovereignty. And so, we're left with this really powerful question, aren't we? Sharif Osman Hadi, the man, the poet, the teacher, was gone. But Sharif Osman Hadi, the Shaheed, the symbol, his story was really just beginning. It makes you wonder, when a leader becomes a symbol, where does their story actually end? And where does the nation's begin?